I know it's the same, but when I was a Detroit cop, we'd go through a domestic violence situation and we'd have to fight them both. Oh, yeah. That's why it's. Yeah.
A question for you. Do you agree that this was the order that looked off to me? I thought
Yeah.
That is.
I looked at that, yeah.
Okay. You agree that it is correct? Or you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't be in both places.
Yeah. Good point. Oh, there are a few. Depending on if they're in good working condition or there's one person who fixes them up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So that you'd have something.
Right, but right, no, I thought that, but I didn't think, like, if you look at the discussion, we talked about ADA being kind of overarching everything and then ordering them differently. So I can't remember.
Okay. How are you?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So that sounds great then. Tell me when you're ready. We're ready? Okay. Let us call the March 25th, 2024 meeting of the Meridian Township Planning Commission to order. First on the agenda is a roll call. Commission. Of course, and I'm like, I've got my notes in there on the one page. Commissioner Snyder, Vice Chair Snyder.
Present.
Okay, Commissioner Bloomer.
Here.
Commissioner Brooks.
Here.
Commissioner McCurtis.
Here.
Commissioner McConnell. Not here.
Excused absence.
Thank you. And Commissioner Scales.
Present.
Okay, thank you. And the chair is here, Commissioner Shrewsbury. Next on the agenda is public remarks. This is public remarks on items that are not slated for a public hearing today. So if you have public comment you'd like to give now, please make sure you fill out one of the forms, give it to the staff, and then you can come to the podium. If you're here to speak on the item that's on the public hearing, we'll have a special public comment just for that too. Seeing nobody for public comment right now, I will move to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner Bloomer,
Second.
second by Commissioner Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm sorry, I should have asked if there's any discussion on that, but hearing none. Thank you, the agenda is approved. And then we're down to approval of the minutes of the March 11th, 2024 meeting of the Planning Commission. Commissioner Scales, would you like to?
I would move to approve the minutes
With an amendment?
of the March 11th meeting with a few amendments.
Okay, is there a second?
Let's hear his amendments first.
Good thinking.
The first being, those present, our vice chair can't be present and absent.
Good catch. Okay. We
I figured to
will,
get technical like that.
I wish I had that superpower.
Don't we all?
And I will leave it at that one.
With that, then I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion on the approval of the minutes as suggested to be amended? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the March 11th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved as amended. Any communications that have come in since we got our packet?
There is not.
And I guess we are at the public hearing on special use permit number 22-021, Silverleaf floodplains special use permit extension. So call this public hearing to order at 6:32.
Thank you. This should be very brief. You approved about 2 years ago SUP 22-021. That was for a floodplain crossing to install a 27-inch storm pipe across 2 floodplains for the Silverleaf development on Bennett Road. Since then, they've gone through site plan approval, site plan process. Site plan approval has been granted for phase 1. Construction has not yet begun, however. According to our ordinance, because construction hasn't yet begun, the SUP requires a 1 year, requires an extension, which you are authorized to grant. The criteria for granting the extension are not the same as granting the original SUP. You can see here the 3 criteria you're looking at. Failed to begin construction within the required time period. That is true. The project continues to be consistent with special use criteria. That is true. No changes have been made to the project since you reviewed this 2 years ago, and remains conforming to all requirements of the previously approved special use permit, and that is true as well. They have been working extensively with the Drain Commissioner's office and received a green light to move toward construction. The delay has been the driving factor in preventing the project from proceeding over the course of the last 2 years. It does remain consistent with the SUP criteria, as I stated. Staff has no major concerns with this. We've received no comment from the public at this time. We do note that this is treated like a public hearing in our ordinance. Michigan planning law doesn't have the same teeth to this as it does the original SUP. This is an extension, not a new SUP. Therefore, no resolution of approval is required for this. This is just a simple vote.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Scales?
Yes, I have a question on the rules governing this. What is the approved time frame?
A special use permit is approved for 2 years. If construction hasn't begun at the end of 2 years, they need to request a 1 year extension.
Okay. So
We anticipate construction to begin this summer.
So my question then is, how long do they have to apply after the 2 year period? Is this ad infinitum or?
No, they get one year extension according to the ordinance.
No, my question is, how long do they have to apply? Say the 2 years runs out. Can they apply year 3, year 4? Or when does the reapplication for an extension time out?
At the end of the 2 year period, they are then allowed to ask for one extension. They cannot ask for a second extension.
Let me try to communicate this a little bit different.
Okay.
I believe what you're asking is when can they apply? They have to apply before the 2 years is up. The application was made prior to the end of the 2 years.
Okay, I did not see when the application,
It was made,
because
the
right now.
request was made prior to the end of the 2 years, but because of the public hearing requirement, we couldn't get it on your last agenda, which would have been prior to the 2 years, so it had to come to this agenda. But they properly submitted the request.
Okay, because I'm looking at this and I see that we're after the 2 years
Yes.
that we're dealing with this, and that's the clarification I needed. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions
Is it,
for staff? Commissioner Blumer?
as I understand it, part of the criteria is that the delay should not be attributable to their own negligence. It has to be caused by outside forces.
That's correct.
And that
It's,
is
yeah,
true in this
they've been
case.
working diligently on this project. They just haven't got the green light from the drain commissioner's office until very recently.
Very good.
Any other questions for staff? I have a quick one. If it's not a resolution, this is something that we would still do the public hearing today and then vote at our next meeting. I mean, is
It
that,
is called a public hearing, so by your bylaws, that is correct. I would need to bring it back one more time, but I don't have to do it by resolution. It can be done by just a straight vote at
Okay.
the time.
Are we allowed to waive our bylaws?
You are, and it has been done in the past.
okay. All right, well, let's,
I
oh,
make a
Commissioner Woodward,
motion that we waive the.
do you want to hear public comment? If there is any public comment on this first before we, or do you want
This
to?
was advertised as a public hearing, that is
Okay.
true.
So you can make any motion you'd like, but do you want to
Well,
close the public hearing, like, hear the public comment if there is any first, and then,
all right. I make a motion to close the public hearing then.
should we see if there's public that would like to speak first?
Yeah. if there are.
Is there anyone here who's wishing to speak on this topic for the public hearing? Okay, thank you, I'm sorry, I just want to be formal to allow opportunity for comment if there is
I make
any.
I don't know if it's proper to make a dual motion, a motion to close the public hearing and to waive the waiting period for a final decision.
Okay, it's been moved, is there a second? Commissioner Scales? I think we should close the public hearing first
think
and
we
then.
should just
Yeah,
close the
I make
yeah.
a motion that we close the public hearing on this.
I support that.
All right, I don't know that we need to vote on that, I think we just close the public hearing.
It's a motion.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't normally.
You don't have to do a roll call, I
Motion.
don't
He
think.
said he made a motion and I seconded. So there's
I
a
don't think
motion
it's
on the
needed,
floor.
but, okay, all in favor of closing the public hearing? Just to be clear. All right, any opposed? All right, thank you.
Now my motion is to waive the waiting period and make a final decision today.
Okay,
That's better.
to waive the bylaws. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Bloomer, seconded by Vice Chair Snyder
This one we probably ought to do a
to
roll call.
waive, yes, absolutely. Is there any discussion on that motion before we take a vote? Okay, let's take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bloomer,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Support.
Commissioner Brooks,
Support.
Commissioner Scales,
Support.
and Commissioner.
McCurtis.
Curtis, thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It has been a long day. And the chair votes yes. So, okay, we've waived our bylaws, and now I would entertain a motion in support of this special use permit, or the extension of special use permit number 22-021. Bennett Holding LLC. Commissioner Scales?
I move to provide an extension for special use permit 22-021 in accordance with our zoning ordinance.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second. Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Commissioner Brooks, second. Moved by Commissioner Scales. Is there any further discussion?
Just so it's clear, the extension is to allow them to complete as originally approved.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it's extending the special use permit number 22-021 that was previously approved.
And we are waiving the bylaws because we have public comment here, and this is just to allow the project to keep moving forward so we don't have to make them wait another 2 weeks.
Right.
Correct. Yes, and we have voted to allow that to happen. Okay, so Commissioner Scales,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Support?
Commissioner McCurtis,
Yes.
Commissioner Bloomer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Snyder,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. The special use permit number 22-021 is extended. Thank you. All right. And then next on our agenda is unfinished business. Do we have any, or are you here to talk about other business? Because there's a lot of that.
Yes.
we bore them? Did we bore them?
Okay. This is the second discussion of the Village of Namoka zoning district. At your request, staff took the existing language, made necessary corrections, and then took the references and then just spelled them out. So you could see exactly what it is the Village of Namoka allows in the Village of Namoka district. That turned into the 6 pages that follow. It's kind of impressive. From here, the dimensional regulations, you can see the dimensional regulations are two layered. So there's regulations that apply strictly for the single-family housing, and then the rest of the dimensional regulations at the end of the ordinance update specify regulations for the multifamily housing that you have in the district. And there's nothing in there for any of the other stuff. As far as the uses by right, we did note, single-family dwellings, two-family dwellings, those are currently allowed, everything's currently allowed. But some of the stuff in there, public educational institutions, non-commercial kennels, there's just things in there that aren't in the district and may or may not be there. The special use permitted activities, that's what it currently says. Multifamily development is allowed up to 14 units per acre. That's how you got the 4 units on the piece that was just recently rezoned RN on Shaw Street. So I've presented this as you asked to see it, and I'm happy to discuss anything that's in here and take it from here.
Commissioner Scales?
Yeah. At our last meeting, one of the questions that came up was, why is this area different than any place else in the township?
Right.
And my research came to bear that this is a historic district of the township. Did you look at any of that?
I haven't come across anything. Are you saying the township designated it a historic district? Or
I'm not sure who designated it, but I think I sent the information to you. That this specific area, the Village of Namoka, is a historic district, and that's why it's different than everything else in the township. And before we start messing with that, I want to make sure that that information is accurate. And if it is accurate, does it bind us in any way?
If you sent that to me, I haven't seen it.
I sent it to you the night we were sitting here.
I asked you to send me okay, you know what I got when I clicked on that, when the link that you sent me, I got an error, and so I didn't, but now that I see, I'll follow up on this and see what I come up with.
I appreciate that. That's
Sure,
helpful.
no problem.
Any other questions? Commissioner Brooks?
Yeah, my question is, so the update here to the ordinance is treating this area the same as any other residential area with these similar characteristics.
That's kind of where you're getting at, because as I've noted, as it currently reads, uses permitted by right are the same uses permitted by right in the RB district. So it's treating it the same in that regard as the RB district, which means what's differentiating. Commissioner Skills has a point. This might be a historic district, and maybe that might be of some focus to that discussion.
But otherwise, so like any other area that's has that designation in our township has this same set of requirements for building, correct?
If anything else in the township was zoned Village of Namoka, it would have these requirements, but the only area of the township is the contiguous area that I previously showed you.
Yeah, okay, I'm not asking my question very well. So we have other, okay, I'm gonna take this back into two parts. So the
Okay.
first part is, what are we rezoning, and I'm sorry, I don't remember this, Namoka as?
Nothing in here is rezoning the Village of Namoka district.
Okay, so we are applying the ordinances that are applied to what residential zone to the Village of Namoka?
The Village of Namoka currently reads allowed uses as shown in the RB district and special uses as allowed in the multifamily districts up to 14 units per acre. What we have suggested is that if you were to see this and the dimensional regulations spelled out rather than by reference, this is what it says. Nothing's been changed in here. Would you like, essentially, would the planning commission like to amend that to tailor the Village of Namoka? You're not rezoning anybody in that process.
So,
For instance, if I may, I apologize.
No, you know
If
this
were to
better than
look
I
at-
do.
If you were to look at the dimensional regulations and say, side yard for 3 family, I'm looking at, I think the third or fourth page, I'm just picking at random. 3 to 10 families, side yard should be no less than 15 feet. Maybe that should be 10 feet because that's what we see out there. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you do or don't. I'm just saying that is not a standard that is necessarily in the Village of Namoka district. It's in the reference to another district
Right.
that the Village of Namoka says you reference to. We don't have to do anything. I was asked to provide this information.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Does that help? Commissioner Bilber?
Is there anything, I couldn't tell from looking at this, is there anything that is unique to the Namoka district that doesn't appear anyplace else in the township?
In driving around there and looking at each one of the parcels, I was struck by the number of duplexes. There are 8 duplexes in there. Duplexes are treated differently in our zoning ordinance in a single-family residence, and staff doesn't believe they need to be treated, that i.e. a single-family lot size and dimension, dimensional regulation, setbacks could apply to a duplex just as well as to a
Well,
single-family residence.
My question is not so much what you see when you drive through, but in the zone package that applies to Namoka.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that is in that package that you simply can't find anyplace else in the township? There's nothing unique to Namoka, is there?
There's not in the language because of it references out, there's give or take 1,500 other parcels in the township that have these uses by right because the reference is to the RB uses by right.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
What we're suggesting is that they go in the other direction. If the planning commission sees the Village of Namoka unique as compared to the RB district, then it might be appropriate to look at the uses by right and say, well, this, and this don't belong in a Village of Namoka setting.
So,
But we're not here to suggest anything. We've only suggested that might be a possibility.
Yeah, I just got curious when you said that it is, or when Commissioner Scales says he found out that it's an historical district. I'm just wondering if, because of its historical nature, did it inherit anything that the rest of the township doesn't have?
I'll research that, but it wouldn't necessarily inherit by virtue of being historical, unless it wouldn't inherit any other dimensional regulations or use regulations. It might inherit some architectural standards, depending if it was a local district, but I'm not aware of a local historic district. So I'm curious who made this. It might be a SHPO thing, State Historic Preservation Office. It might have been in one of our references somewhere. I will research this and get back to you.
Okay.
If anyone's interested, the village of Namoka was platted on January 3rd, 1883. So, want me to send you a link to this book?
That's before I was born.
Is that the library, Capillary District Library? I just saw that too.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, very.
I'll take another shot at that. Like I said, the link that Commissioner Scales sent to me, I didn't get open. I apologize. But if you want to try that again, I'll start there and see. It's interesting that it was platted that long ago.
Probably needs some updating, huh? It's been a while.
Just from my, you said you wouldn't feel comfortable as staff making suggestions about things that may or may not belong there. I'm looking at uses permitted by right, and I'm not sure that it's necessary, given the space that it is, the golf course be listed, or, just looking at the things that are permitted by right currently as it is written. But I don't know sort of current, future best use. It's more of a, like, I don't see it happening, so I'm not sure it matters if it's there or not, but I'm just
I
looking
don't
to
think
us
it's,
to kind of give some thoughts on what we think might be able to come out of that list or be amended slightly.
right. One suggestion I think we could make, number 10 in allowed uses is signs in accordance with section 86, 685. That's one of the things of our ordinance. There have so many references back, in the name of taking references out. I think it would be a good idea to take that out of allowed uses, because we have a section called sign, we have a sign ordinance
Right.
that regulates signs in
applies
residential districts.
To all districts, okay.
Yeah,
Well, and then
stuff like that.
One less
It's a
place to have to update later if you make any
Right.
changes, yep.
Right.
Okay. So our homework, you're gonna look into historical district, and our homework is to come to the next meeting with some concrete, or maybe before the next meeting, to give thoughts on, or be ready to discuss the next time we talk about this. If you have thoughts on things that should come out, or questions for staff on things you think might be subject to change, does that make good sense for?
That's
Okay.
good. Again, there's nobody who's got a development who's waiting for a decision on this. So it's not time critical. It's just I just feel like if we're gonna do this, let's look at it and give it a fair shake.
Okay, that sounds great. I think one thing we're not interested in doing is sort of upsetting something that is right now. We're not
Correct.
looking to change something that would make somebody a non-allowable use.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I can promise you there's no golf courses.
Okay,
Currently, you're not making anybody non-conforming. Anything like that. I'd let you know.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say,
I've
you'll
looked
save
at
us
every
from
parcel
ourselves.
In that area and mapped it out. I'd tell you if you were making somebody non-conforming.
okay, that sounds good.
All those
Commissioner McCurtis, did you have a
dog kennels are in serious
question?
trouble, though.
No, I was just,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I was saying all those private dog kennels are going to be in serious trouble.
So, everybody got homework? I think this has been helpful discussion, thank you, and is next meeting okay to come back with these? Okay, yep, that sounds great, thank you. All right, so next on our agenda, we have esteemed development.
It's been too long. I hadn't come and talked to you guys for a while, so I wanted to come say hi. So just want to give you an update on a few things. And actually, I have an unlisted third item that we'll get to. But to start with, I wanted to update the planning commission on where we are at in the marijuana licensing process, because the planning commission still has a role to play in this. As everyone's aware, last year we went through an ordinance update that allowed for recreational marijuana within the township. The board opened a window for applications in January. Within that window, after the ordinance changes. There were 5 zones you could apply for. Within that window, we received a total of 5 applications, one each in, we'll call it the Hazlet zone, the Hagedorn zone, and the South Okemos zone, and then none in the West Grand River zone, which is roughly Park Lake to the township border with East Lansing, and 2 in the East Grand River zone, which is the district that includes the area from roughly the Sparrow Building to Marsh and Grand River and then north to Target. Call it that big area. As part of the ordinance that the Township Board established, those applications then went through a review subcommittee. That subcommittee was made up of the Director of Planning and Community Development, the Director of Neighborhoods and Economic Development, and the Township Manager or their designee. The Township Manager designated one of my staff members who previously worked on the medical marijuana process in the township, and so had a background in it. And myself and Director Clark met as required, held public hearings as required, and have at this point made recommendations for the 4 licenses. The first 3, they're the only licensee in their district, will be in front of the Township Board for public hearing at their next meeting, which is the 2nd. And then the board can make a decision on those 3 licensees in the future. The other 2 licensees will come back for a public hearing, a separate public hearing, and a decision to be made on those later in April or early in May. What does this all matter to the Planning Commission? Ultimately, the next step of that is they still have to go through the special use permit process. And so we're bringing this forward to just give you an update of where we're at, because you're going to start seeing these most likely in late April or early May will be the first applications for special use permit to come through. I don't know, for those of you that are familiar with the process thus far, the Hazlet and South Okemos locations were both existing buildings, both of which did some work before the COVID shutdown. The South Okemos one at this point actually has temporary occupancy and is working towards getting their medical license issued from the state. They will be the first one to open. They've already submitted for a special use permit. We have not processed it because they technically don't have a license yet. The Hazlet group is not far behind. They are revitalizing their permits so they can finish the work under the medical and then be ready for recreational. The other 2, so the Hagedorn will be a new construction, although their new application is, instead of new construction, they intend to reuse the house that's on the site. They have a long way to go to do that. The Grand River, the other 2 options in the East Grand River area, one would be new construction next to Sparrow. The other would be reuse of the existing the former Capital National Bank building, which is between Old Chicago and the Rug Shop. And so I just wanted to give everyone an update so you had the information. Also, because it's a little complicated, we decided to do it in person so I can answer any questions you have as opposed to just slapping it on paper and then leaving it at that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions as to where we're headed here.
Commissioner Skills?
Yeah, I heard you say between Old Chicago and where?
And the old Capital, it's the old Capital National Bank building, so I'll pull it up here real quick. Conveniently
And the rug
enough,
shop is what
I have access.
the rug shop.
It's the rug shop,
Okay,
yeah.
Got you. I got you now. All right.
So it's that building right there. So Old Chicago, rug shop, this was the old Capital National Bank. This is the mall property.
Any other questions?
Kind of an offbeat question. Do you happen to know if all of the applicants are common ownership, or are they separate entities?
They are all separate entities. They've all created new LLCs for this process, which makes it fun to try and track as a staff person. The South Okemos and the Hazlet group are the exact same group that we vetted previously for medical. It's the exact same people, exact same ownership. The Hagedorn group, I believe, added an owner to that group. It's the same core, but I believe they've added a 3rd person. The Grand River group that was selected for medical is the same group, and then the new group is a township resident and a gentleman from Indiana that are partnered in a couple locations throughout the state.
Other questions? Commissioner Scales?
Will we be able to get a list of the owners' names to identify, just in case we may have a conflict of interest?
Absolutely. Once the board makes a determination on who the licensees are, before they come back to the planning commission, we'll let everybody know who's coming.
Thank you.
Just for our reminder, these special use permits under the revised ordinance would be, we're making a recommendation to the township board, right?
Yes, the township board has retained final approval on everything related to marijuana.
Okay, but we'll do a public hearing
Yep.
and make a recommendation.
Correct.
Okay. And it would be helpful, when that comes to us for, just to remind us of sort of the criteria that
Absolutely.
we're supposed to consider as we look at a special use permit, that would be helpful.
And for those that are previous medical applicants, we will give you the information that was previously part of the approval.
That would be great too, yep.
So we have that comparison.
Because I think we have some new people and.
And tangibly, from our perspective at this point, there's nothing that has jumped out at us that would lead us to change or modify the conditions. I mean, functionally, they act the same. The difference is going to be the Hagedorn proposal is entirely different from the same group, and then whatever happens in the East Grand River corridor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Curtis, did you have a question?
Yeah, just for clarification, so are we talking about four licenses? Or?
Correct. So there's 5 districts. One of those districts did not get an applicant. And so there will be no license in that district at this time. The board is at any time able to open another window to accept license applications. I do not anticipate that's going to happen anytime soon. Certainly, at least not until we get through this process.
And are they, and I think you said this, but I just wanted, again, for clarification.
Yep.
Are they all medical or mixed? Some medical, some
These are all recreational
all
applications.
recreational?
Of them, it appears as though one of them is going to ditch medical entirely. It looks like one of them is going to keep it at least for a time, and the other 2 have kind of left it up to, well, if you want us to have it, we'll keep it, or the other 3. So it's no secret, I've said this multiple times, medical licensing is likely to go by the wayside.
Yeah.
The state has started to have those conversations of how do we, blend them together. It's just going to be very complicated because the enabling legislation is so dramatically different. The medical was 5 paragraphs and the recreational was pages on pages on pages. So at some point, though, the state's not even going to be bringing enough money to pay for it. So why have it at that point?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember us doing stuff with marijuana facilities last year.
You did. So last year you had, so a couple of the applicants let their medical approval expire, and presumably anticipating that recreational was coming, they decided to, 2 of them decided to re-up their medical approval in anticipation of that. And so
Okay.
that was Hazlitt and East Grand River. There's also SkyMint, but as everyone's aware, SkyMint no longer exists as an ongoing operation.
Okay, so we approved, I think it was like 2 that we did last year. Might have been 3. We approved those, and so then what these will be new special use permits for potentially the same locations.
They are the same locations.
Same
yes.
locations.
Potentially.
and in some cases, the same companies.
Yes.
Going for a different licensing structure. Okay.
And largely this comes, not to get too far into the weeds here, but largely this comes down to the fact that when we did medical, we did it by a lottery system. And although there's some discussion of this amongst lawyers, most municipal lawyers will tell you that's not legal for the recreational side. You have to do an actual review. You can't just pick a name out of a hat. So we decided to completely bifurcate the 2 and have 2 separate processes.
when do you anticipate that this is coming our way? Is it not, obviously, next meeting, but next couple of months? Or?
I suspect you will see the first application either late April or early May.
Okay, thank you.
And then they'll sort of trickle in after that. Some of them will be right on top of the ball, and some of them will wait a little while.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for that update.
Thank you.
All right, next.
Last thing we wanted to bring up this evening is as you can see, the planning commission currently has, well, we have 6 tonight. We currently have 7 members. There are 8 seats at the dais, but the planning commission is technically authorized for 9 members. When we had 9 members in the past, it was somewhat awkward. There were times Jerry Richards sat down here. There was times Bill McConnell stood along the back wall. It's tight with the way our room is laid out. And so staff has brought this up a couple of times to the supervisor, and the supervisor recently reached out to the chair and the vice chair to discuss potentially moving the number of planning commissioners from 9 to 7. And I won't speak for the chair or the vice chair, but there appeared to be no major opposition to that. The township board generally seems supportive, and so they wanted to make sure that there was before they proceeded with introduction and further action on this, wanted to make sure that the planning commission had no major concerns with making that change. So here this evening to hear any concerns, questions, comments.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have questions for staff? We got a little bit of an opportunity to pre-discuss this, and I asked a few questions, and it seemed like they were satisfactorily answered. And, my concern is that there isn't any history that I just wouldn't be aware of that might affect this, but. Commissioner Bloomer?
My only comment is, I think it's unfortunate that the decision seems to be being made around the idea that we don't have enough chairs.
I support that.
I don't see any problem with reducing the size of the panel. We seem to be fully functional with 7 members. I just don't want the public to think that it's so shallow a decision that we're deciding it because we don't have enough chairs.
Thank you for saying that. I think the questions that we were talking about and that were raised with us were a little bit more substantial than that. Just, comparing us to similar sized communities and how many people are in those communities and how many members they have of their similar bodies and things like that. Sort of, could we effectively meet quorum, make quorum, and kind of knowing our history where we have had vacancies and been able to function with a lower number. So those are some of the things that we talked about before. You're right, it isn't just about chairs.
No, and I would also add that since the planning enabling legislation allowed for this change in 2008, we've added 3 boards that focus on planning related issues. The CIA, the DDA was ramped up, and the BRA was added. And so there's a lot of boards looking at various planning and development related issues.
I think there's also a recognition that it's just downright difficult lately to get people involved in government activity.
We are trying to get close to full staff, but we could use volunteers on nearly every board if you're out there watching. The ZBA, I plug the ZBA because the ZBA, we just need an alternate right now. So you don't have to be there every time. But, last week they had 3. And they had to use their 1 alternate, and they still only had 3, which is the bare minimum they have to function. And so the more people that want to get involved, we will find you a place. Trust me when I say that.
And my experience on the planning commission is that there seems to be enough of, I don't want to say volatility, but mobility on the board that opportunities for participation seem to pop up pretty regularly as people decide to move on to bigger and better things, as several of our past members have done recently. Commissioner Scales?
Yes, I heard some discussion about quorum. This is going to change our quorum. Our quorum is 5 right now, but this will reduce our quorum to 4. This is historically, to give you some background, this is something that when I was on the board in 2012, 2016, we attempted to do this then, but problems arose at that time, and so we had to change course. This is a good action to take, and I am sensitive to doing it by reducing the seats at the dais. But I think that was more of a foregone conclusion, that we would look at reducing it based on the amount of volunteers that currently take an opportunity to get more involved in their community here in the township as of late.
That was my question actually about the quorum. What is our quorum requirement when we have 9 members versus 7 members?
It will drop by 1.
So it will go from 5 to 4 requirements?
Correct.
So is there any risk of having a split vote if
Still an odd number.
4 is still odd?
No.
We have to have 4 present to conduct business.
Right.
But the majority is still the majority.
Right.
Yeah, you still need a majority of 2 votes isn't going to pass something. 3
Right,
votes
that's what I
is-
mean. So like if we had a 4 as our quorum, then couldn't we end up with 2 on one side and 2 on the other, and then we can't make a decision?
Wouldn't pass anyway. You would need all
Right.
4 to pass.
That defeats it.
Yep. So in,
Am I the only one confused?
You need 3 to pass, don't you?
Yeah, I thought that's,
Yeah.
Is the rule about
Yeah, you'd need 3 to pass a majority.
Oh, am I missing?
Pass an issue.
Am I mixing my ZBA?
You still need a majority of this board,
oh, so all 4 people would have to.
which would be 4.
is that what our bylaws say?
You don't need a majority of the quorum?
No.
Planning Commission
That's why I was
requires,
confused.
he's checking.
I'm looking right now.
Say, let me go to the bylaws, which I should have had out.
I have those on paper.
All right, grab them.
Simple majority of those providing a quorum is present, a simple majority of those present and voting shall be required for the
Yeah.
original action.
Present, so it's 3.
So
There are
3.
2 exceptions. The adoption of the master plan requires the affirmative vote of 6 members, and any other action by which law, ordinance, or parliamentary authority requires otherwise.
So everything by law requires a majority of the board.
So rezonings and ordinance amendments will still require a majority of the board.
Yeah.
But a special use permit, unless I'm forgetting something in state law off the top of my head, would in theory be able to get approved by 3 persons.
But that said 6, didn't it? It said you need,
For the master plan only.
oh, for the master plan.
Because the master plan requires a 2/3 majority under state law, and that's 6 in this case, and that actually doesn't. 5 divided by 7. I'm trying to do the math on 5 divided by 7. That's a good one off the top of my head.
That's close. It's gonna be close.
Yeah, we're still gonna say you need 6 votes to adopt a master plan regardless.
We will, yeah, well, that's probably a good thing, actually. We will probably want to just take a quick peek at our bylaws to make sure that nothing in the bylaws needs to be updated if this goes through. So kind of talk about those together
Yep.
too, but,
On the list.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments, considerations? Are you okay to have staff prepare a draft?
One more question.
Yes, go ahead.
So then for us to have a meeting, our quorum is 4 people,
Correct.
right? That's what we're saying, if we went down to this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Okay,
I would rephrase that to say that we can have a meeting, we just can't transact any business.
That's fair.
good point, yes, thank you. We've done that once or twice before when we had things to discuss, the larger group. Okay. Sounds great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, you said you had one other bonus item?
I'm going to tie it into the update from the board here.
Okay.
So just a couple things from the board. The Shaw Street rezoning was adopted. If previously we haven't shared that, that is what is driving a lot of this discussion about the RN district, because that's what the board ended up on for that rezoning. The self-storage facility was turned down on Green River Avenue, and they introduced this ordinance that we just discussed. The last thing I want to bring up this evening is you will be meeting, your next meeting is April 8th. At that meeting, we anticipate at this time to have a request from the developers of the Village of Okemos for concept plan review for amendments to their MUPUD plan. under the MUPUD ordinance that it was one of the first big things I did here, actually, was finish updating that ordinance in 2021. We added a potential for a concept plan review. It's a quick 30-day review. Staff really doesn't even get involved. We bring it to you, bring it to the board for feedback. That's what it is. It's to give them an opportunity before they spend the time and effort to do full engineered drawings to get feedback on the changes on a proposal. In this case, changes to the previously approved plan. So I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. That is coming. We do not have the application yet, so I can't tell you what it is. We expect that it's coming next week. So the board is aware this is coming. I'm making the planning commission aware this is coming. There will be, it's not a formal motion. You don't need it's really just they're seeking feedback on the proposed change, positive, negative, or in between.
So likely a representative of the developer here.
I
to
suspect there will be
share,
several.
And we'll have things, okay.
Okay.
Interesting, that's a development, that's
It's a development.
good to hear.
Progress.
Yes, perhaps.
It's a development.
Okay,
So just to verify, there's no public hearing attached to that then?
There's not. This is entirely just,
Okay.
public's always welcome.
Sure.
But it's not, because it's not a formal submittal, it's, really, if you think about it outside the context of this specific project, it's a great idea. It gives someone with an idea for the corner of, I don't know, Hagedorn and Jolly, that's MSU property. Somebody wants, so don't read into this for anything. It's a farm field. Somebody wants to do like a 3-story apartment building with the restaurant in front and some commercial office building or whatever. So they could come forward and get some feedback without having to go through, and it may not work from an engineering standpoint. They may not find that out later, but at least they know up front there's at least some appetite for the project. And that's what it's intended for. In this case, it's just a little different because we've been through a few concepts for this one already.
interesting, yeah, well, looking forward to that very much. So mark your calendars now, nobody be,
And this is the same developer who's been working with us,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
good deal. Anything else?
That's all.
Board
Thank
update?
you very much for indulging me this evening.
Any other questions for staff? Cool. Liaison reports.
ZBA did meet this past, was it like Monday? So last Wednesday, I'm thinking. Status quo, just a series of variances being requested by residents for whether it's a deck, or to allow another house on the property, but status quo, nothing major.
Thank you. Commissioner McCurt, does anybody else have anything to share? Okay. Project update reports, are there,
There was no changes, there's no.
okay. Look at the one from the last packet. Is there anyone who'd like to give public remarks? This is our second opportunity for open public remarks. Seeing none, any commissioners who would like to speak who haven't already on anything else? Seeing none?
I just,
Oh,
I
yes,
have
go
one
ahead.
comment. I just was pondering
Mr.
this. For the size of the planning commission change, if there is any impact to other rules, I would at least be open and entertaining changing rules that would allow us to accommodate 7 members if staff were to see something that would be necessary. I don't know that they are, just wanted to throw that out there, like as a potential proposal.
Thank you.
I think the 7 members make sense. I wanted to make sure it works in the long term.
Streamlined. That's helpful.
Which brings up a question I've got now that you mentioned it.
Okay.
Do we have our own authority to amend our operating rules, or do our changes have to be approved by the township board?
You updated your bylaws last year.
Okay.
There's a process for you guys to amend your own bylaws.
Okay.
Good deal. Thank you. Anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting of March 25th, 2024 of the Meridian Township Planning Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Scales, seconded by Commissioner Bloomer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. The meeting is adjourned.